Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our news update, which is a part of our Beef Brunch educational series. My name is Ashley Edwards, and with me today are Jason Holmes and Lee Falk. If this is your first time tuning in, we are trying to make these bi-weekly reports. They are being filmed in advance to posting them online, meaning there might be a slight delay in getting them to you. For future updates, you can check out our LSU Ag Center Livestock channel on YouTube. We will also do our best to make sure that we include any links that we mention in the description below the video on YouTube. So to get us started, I want to talk just a little bit about a weather update, what's going on throughout the state, really. We're seeing just kind of, I guess, different amounts of rainfall, different weather outlooks, depending on where you're at in the state. I know I was looking earlier online at our LSU Ag Center weather reports for our different research stations. And it looked like, I believe on the 14th or 15th, our station in Hammond had about 5 or so inches of rain. But if you look around the same time, the same dates at maybe Iberia or at the Dean Lee Research Station, there was only maybe an inch or two of rain there. So we've been talking a little bit the last few updates about how dry it's been in the South, and it looks like that's kind of continuing in Central and South Louisiana, with the exception of maybe some heavier rainfall just, on 1 or 2 days in the past couple of weeks. Lee, do you mind touching on the weather in the north part of the state?
Thank you, Ashley. It's good to be with you all today, and just a brief kind of weather and field condition update for northern end of the state. We had spotty showers and some heavy rainfalls move through, kind of like what Ashley was talking about earlier in the week. It was very variable. You could be in one place within what we consider northwest region and receive no rain, and then be flooding in other regions. We had a couple of reports from some brief flash flooding in pastures around Sabine and Natchitoches parishes on Wednesday. We did experience, I had one report of up to 10 inches of rain within a very short period, so flooding was definitely a concern. Haymaking continues, hit and miss. Had a few pop-up showers that's kind of interrupted some plans. Most of the ryegrass that's being baled right now is probably a little bit lower quality now. We're definitely over the curve as far as quality goes when we're talking about our winter grasses and definitely ryegrass. Jason and I were talking just a little bit before we started recording this deal, and it's kind of in agreement that Bermuda grass is lagging behind just a little bit. Jason's had several reports of Bermuda grass not performing well, maybe attributed to some cooler temperatures that we've experienced later on in the spring last couple of weeks, and maybe some heavy ryegrass covers on that pasture. I just like to take the opportunity to tell you, if you hadn't already got your ryegrass off, and many haven't because it's been such a challenging time period with rains to get it off your hay fields and such, that if you got Bermuda grass, your predominant forage in there, your predominant grass type for your summer pasture, you probably need to think about options to go on and try to get it off of there, even if there is a little chance of rain and so on and so forth. But looking forward, we're looking for more rain in the forecast in our neck of the woods, and temperatures are warming up as well.
Thank you, sir. So our next topic is one that I know many agents have already been getting questions on, and that is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. And we have a report that we're going to link below in the video description from Dr. Michael Delaberto, kind of going over this in a little bit more detail than what we will today. But essentially, back in April, USDA announced that there's going to be a legislation package that will include direct payments to agricultural producers for actual losses across commodities, in addition to different government purchase for certain commodities for food banks and other things. So as we look at it from a livestock producer standpoint, livestock eligible for this program include cattle, lambs, and hogs. producers will be able to apply through their local FSA office. And one point that we really want to stress is that you should contact your local FSA agent to get more information and all the details on applying for this specifically. Those FSA offices, are close to the public. And so you need to either call them, or if you have an email for your agent, you can do that. We recommend calling them to see how they're going to want all the paperwork turned in, whether that's going to be electronically emailed to them or to drop it off in paper form to the office. You need to call them for an appointment. Those appointments will be essentially an appointment for a phone meeting, but you do need to make an appointment with them. The applications, as far as USDA goes, producers can apply beginning on May 26th, and they're going to be accepting applications through August 28th. What we heard earlier from one of our local FSA agents is that, payments might start as early as June or the first week of June. But again, that's just going to that'll be based on when you get your application in. Trying to make sure I hit all the high points there. Again, we just can't stress enough, make sure you get with your local FSA agent. They will be able to get you the specifics on actual funding that can be returned, as well as all of the different forms and things that you are going to need to turn in. Keep in mind that Monday is Memorial Day, and they will be closed for that holiday. Jason, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, ma'am. I think you covered it. Folks, just get out there. If you can get your local contact, FSA office contact off of the internet. You can just Google search USDA, FSA, or just Google search Farm Service Agency, Louisiana. And you can find the contact information for your local FSA office from that website.
Thank you, sir. So we talked a little bit about weather earlier and kind of the heat coming up, and Jason's going to do a market outlook here later on. But as prices start coming up, we know people are going to start moving their cattle. So we see people moving cattle to sale barns. We also see the heat coming up. Lee, do you mind talking a little bit about different tips that we have for producers to handle heat stress or manage that to minimize it?
Yes, Ashley. So what you said is absolutely correct. Kind of having a confluence of events right now. As Jason's going to talk about, the market's looking a little bit better on these cattle. And also you're kind of seeing a conclusion of some yearlings coming off of ryegrass. Most of that has already occurred. Most of your big yearlings that have been grazing all winter on your winter pastures have already come off, but there may be a few stragglers behind. But also we're moving in time where we're starting to see some fall-born calves weaned, and whether you're going to be retaining ownership background in them, or if you're sending them straight to market. Just as a general reminder, I'm sure most folks that listen to this probably work outside anyway, and you'd tell me that the heat's been a problem for a couple of weeks now, but we're really starting to get into some warmer temperatures, and you can really shrink some cattle pretty severely right now if they're not handled right. And shrink is not a complex issue, but it can be a very costly issue if it's not handled right. And the tips are pretty basic when you're talking about trying to avoid those big, 3, 4, 5% shrinks, even up to 8 or 9%. And they're pretty basic. One of the main ones that I can think of is on these hot days, of course, it makes sense, start early, try to get them cattle pinned and get your working and your sorting done as soon as you can see light on a cow to get them pinned. Another tip, of course, is to keep water for them. You want to provide them plenty of water, no matter if you're just pinning to send to the sale barn, or if you're pinning to background them, or gonna ship them somewhere else to be sold. Make sure they got plenty of access to fresh water, and of course free choice hay if you're holding them for any length of time, and feed if you're talking about a backgrounding program, or if it's going to be a little bit before you ship. course, we want to try to minimize the amount of time if you're selling those calves directly off of mamas and directly at the sale barn, you're wanting to minimize the time that those calves are in the pens. So the big train wrecks that I've seen on shrinking cattle down in regards to this is the ones where it took 2 or 3 days to pen them. They ran them with horses and dogs for a couple of days and finally got them in the pen and sorted them off and held them for 3 or 4 days waiting on trucking or waiting on the sale. And those calves can just absolutely melt under those conditions. And I'll end up on shrink by saying this: be careful on your shade. That's something that a lot of cattlemen, we put a lot of thought into our fences. We put a lot of thought into our squeeze chutes and our handling facilities, and we put a lot of planning in place as to how we're going to handle our cattle. But sometimes shade gets kind of lost by the wayside, as how much shade's needed, how much we truly need, room we need to get those cattle under some shade during these hot conditions. So it's really, point of all this is get you aware of it. It's getting to be that time of year. As we said, it's heating up. So it's now time to move into those, put those plans in place when you're penning cattle and getting ready to market your cattle or wean cattle, that knowing we're going to be dealing with some warm weather and try to avoid shrink if possible.
All right, thank you. Jason, do you mind going on into a market update?
Yes, ma'am. If you'll stop sharing, I'll share my screen real quick.
Yes, give me just one moment. Okay, I believe you should be good to go.
All right, can y'all see that slide now?
Yes, sir.
All right, good deal. So I appreciate the opportunity to visit today about the markets. Last time I got to visit, and we were all under the mindset of how much lower can it get, and I'm glad that we did finally hit the bottom of the valley and are starting to come back up the other side. So that's a good thing. I guess before I get into this, I would like to just mention that some of y'all very well could be listening to this on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but some very well on Monday. So that being Memorial Day, I just ask you to take pause and remember why we do get to celebrate that day. So what's happening now? Cash fed trade on fed cattle, fat cattle. They traded this week between 117 and 120, which is some good news for those folks that do have some cash negotiated fed cattle out there. That's about steady from where we were last week. Futures on those fed cattle currently, that's today, May the 22nd. We're trading between $96 and $98 for August delivery, which again, that's about steady based on where we were last year. So the numbers that I've got here for steers and then our feeder steers, I pulled these from Oklahoma City. That gives us a good regional picture of what our cattle here would be valued at: medium and large frame scores, 1s and 2s. So for this week, these are actual numbers for this week. They sold between 141 and 150. Which the good news there, that's about $4 to $10 higher than where we were this time last week. So that's excellent news for those folks that, like Lee was talking about, moving some of those wean cattle to market. It's good to see that those wean cattle, which we would suspect would be somewhere in that 500 to 600 pound range, are trending upward. Those feeder steers, 7 to 8 weights, were 126 to 131. They were about steady based on last week, and then for August delivery in the futures markets, they were trading between 128 and 129. So our daily slaughter rate continues to improve. The Livestock Marketing Information Center was reading some of their reports today. So they estimate steer and heifer slaughter for this past Wednesday, May the 20th, was around 78,000 head. That's about a 10,000 head increase of where we were this time last Wednesday. So that's a good sign that our slaughter rate is slowly improving. Looking at some cattle facts reports, they expect that we should see a steady increase each week in that daily slaughter until we get to about that 88 to 93,000 head a day, based on CDC requirements in those meat processing facilities and social distancing guidelines, and just the time that it's taken to get that fabricated product from one end of the plant to the other. So CattleFax is expecting about 88 to 93,000 head a day, and we'll probably see a little bit of pushback there, just in terms of logistics of being able to get that product out. Our local slaughter, we were visiting before we started recording about our local slaughter capacity. It continues to show that same bottleneck. A lot of folks out there who are seeking some locally sourced beef. And a lot of folks have been very successful in that, and we're happy that those folks are moving some of that local product. But our local slaughter capacity is suffering from the same problems in terms of just a bottleneck of being able to get that product out the doors. So we're seeing that on a local level as well. Just one caveat to slaughter. So slaughter is down 24%. But beef production, the actual meat production, is down 22%, and that's due to those increase in slaughter weights, and that's whenever we're looking at about 44 pounds above what we were this time last year in slaughter weights. We can understand why we can be down 24% in beef production, but only down 22 in that actual meat supply. So our fed cattle supply does continue to build up in our feedlots. It's good that we're seeing slaughter capacity increasing, but whenever we're looking at a backup of about 1 million cattle is what's estimated out there that's backlogged right now, it's just naturally, whenever you're dealing with those kind of numbers, it's naturally going to take us a little bit of time to work through that backlog of cattle. With that increase in slaughter weights, we are getting, like I said a while ago, we're getting an increase in beef production. So with that, we are seeing a lower trend in our box beef cutout values, which should start correlating into what consumers are paying for beef in the grocery store shelves. And so hopefully we've seen that pinnacle of those beef prices, and now that supply between the packer and the consumer, that supply is starting to get a little bit, I guess, just getting a little bit better outlook, then we should start seeing some of those prices being lower for us on the consumer side. So today the cattle on feed was released. So anytime that report comes out, it normally gets a pretty good bit of traction in terms of cattle media markets. So I figured I'd go ahead and include that in there. So cattle and calves on feed, and remember that those are reports based on feedlots with a capacity of 1,000 head or more. So on May 1, 11.2 million head. That's about 5% below where we were on May 1, 2019. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we were 2020, January 2020, that's about a million head less. So that 11.2 million is about a million head less cattle on feed where we were January 2020. So placements in feedlots during April, 1.43 million head, or about 22% below 2019, and the second lowest for April since the series began in 1996. So again, as a comparison, pre-COVID, around here, January 2020, our placements were about 530,000 less now than they were January 2020. And then marketings during April, 1.46 million head, 24% below where we were 2019. And that marketing number is the lowest since we did begin the series. And that number is about 470,000 less than where we were in 2020. So another noteworthy observation that I picked out of the report. So other disappearances, that includes death, loss, movement from feedlot to pasture, shipments to other feedlots for further feeding. So other disappearances in this report totaled 70,000 head, or 17% above 2019. So I thought it was pretty interesting. Went back and looked at some previous reports. So for the past 6 months, other disappearances have been 11 to 19% below year ago levels. So I thought that was pretty important. Now don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I don't think that has anything to do with increased death losses, but I think it does point the picture to a lot of those feedlots may have moved some of those lighter weight feeder cattle back out into pasture, or maybe they moved them to a different facility in a holding pattern. I don't think that was more the heavier weight cattle. I think it was some of those lighter weight cattle that were presently on feed. I think it does point to the fact that a lot of those feedlot managers probably moved those cattle back off of feed, moved them onto a pasture setting or something else. So I thought that was a pretty interesting piece of information that came out in this report. Thank you, Ashley. That's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Bear with us just a second as we swap our screens back. So one more thing for me to touch on is the Beef Improvement Federation is hosting their annual research symposium online this year, and it is free. So again, they're doing a free and virtual symposium for the Beef Improvement Federation. That will occur June 8th through the 12th. You can find more information on beefimprovement.org. And it looks like they're going to start at about noon each day, and it'll run about half a day. So they'll have different topics that they will cover. Sometimes they have little breakout sessions, and you can pick which talk you want to listen to. So I'm really interested in seeing how that's going to occur on a virtual format. I think it's going to be really neat. But they have topics for producers of all kinds. So be sure to check that out. You can look at their schedule. Again, their website is beefimprovement.org. You do need to register in advance. I did that earlier, and it was pretty much just your name, email address, you know, what type of producer you are, what kind of operation you have. Before we conclude, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
Hey, Ashley, I'm just going to make one other comment. We talked in past reports about the rise and the increasing popularity of ranchers selling their beef directly to consumers. And one thing that we kind of want to mention, we talked about just briefly about the backlog at the major processors, and of course we talked last time about the wait times we're experiencing locally as far as getting cattle processed, and those wait times continue to be a problem locally. We talked to a couple of plants that are local that are booking right now on into February and March of next year, so that continues to be a problem. One thing of note that I'd like to mention to those of you who are getting into this beef business, and I think it's a great thing. It's wonderful for us to be marketing our product directly to producers. But one area I'd really like to stress is the quality of product you're putting out. Make sure whenever you're going into this business and you're going to be selling beef, either whole beeves or halves or individual retail cuts, make sure that you have a plan in place as far as your nutrition. We want to make sure that we're selling the public a great product, that all these people who are having their first time experience buying locally raised local beef, that they have a good experience that first time and that they're getting a good quality product. So pay a close attention on your feeding programs, and if you need any assistance developing a feeding program, any one of us would be happy to help, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about that.
All right, thank you. Jason, are you good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, so as we wrap up, I just want to mention again that we do have webinars that are associated with our Beef Brunch educational series. We are trying to host one a month. We're aiming for the second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. They are live events. And so you can view those webinars after they've been recorded. We are posting them to our YouTube channel. So that again, that's LSU Ag Center -livestock. This past month, we had a two-part series. The series was titled What's Bugging You? The first one featured Dr. Sebe Brown talking about armyworm and Bermuda grass stem maggot control. And the second part was Jason Holmes talking about external parasite control in livestock. So be sure to check those out. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, we're going to keep trying to make these news updates, bi-weekly reports. And we will have our next webinar with Dr. Ron Strahan on Tuesday, June 9th at 10:30. So be on the lookout for more information for that. And with that, again, we hope that you have a great Memorial Day weekend. And I want to second what Jason said earlier. You know, just take some time to stop and reflect and think about why we do have this holiday. Thank you.